One of the most significant events that boosted the Chinese stock market was the face-to-face meeting between U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping in Bali, Indonesia on November 14. This was the first in-person meeting between the two leaders since Biden took office, and it marked a rare opportunity for dialogue amid rising tensions and competition between the two superpowers. The meeting lasted for more than 3 hours and covered a wide range of topics, from trade and technology to human rights and Taiwan. According to the White House, President Biden explained that the United States will continue to compete vigorously with China, but also stressed that this competition should not veer into conflict and that the two countries must manage the competition responsibly and maintain open lines of communication. President Xi echoed this sentiment and said that China and the U.S. should respect each other's core interests and major concerns and avoid misjudgment and miscalculation. The meeting also resulted in some concrete outcomes that generated hopes of warmer ties between the two countries. For example, the two leaders agreed to work together on transnational challenges such as climate change, global health security, and debt relief for developing countries. They also welcomed ongoing efforts to address specific issues in bilateral relations, such as trade disputes, cyber attacks, and visa restrictions, and encouraged further progress in these existing mechanisms. Moreover, they noted the importance of ties between the people of both countries and expressed their willingness to facilitate cultural and educational exchanges. One of the most sensitive issues that was discussed during the meeting was Taiwan, which China considers a breakaway province and has been increasing its military pressure on. President Biden reiterated the U.S. One China policy and its opposition to any unilateral changes to the status quo by either side. He also raised U.S. objections to China's coercive and increasingly aggressive actions toward Taiwan, which undermine peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and in the broader region. President Xi warned that Taiwan was the most important and sensitive issue in U.S.-China relations and that any interference or support for Taiwan's independence would be met with a resolute response. The meeting between Biden and Xi was widely seen as a positive step toward easing tensions and stabilizing relations between the two countries, which have been strained by a series of conflicts and confrontations over trade, technology, human rights, and regional security. The meeting also signaled a recognition by both sides that cooperation is necessary on some global issues that affect both countries' interests and responsibilities. The impact of the meeting was reflected in the performance of the Chinese stock market, which rose sharply after the news of the meeting broke out. The Shanghai Composite Index gained 2.3% on November 15, while the Shenzhen Component Index surged 3.4%. The Hang Seng Index in Hong Kong also jumped 2.1%. Analysts attributed the rally to the improved sentiment among investors who saw the meeting as a sign of reduced uncertainty and risk of escalation between the two countries. The meeting also boosted the confidence of Chinese companies that are listed or plan to list in the U.S., which have been facing regulatory scrutiny and threats of delisting by U.S. authorities over accounting and data security issues. The meeting suggested that both sides are willing to find a solution to these issues through dialogue and cooperation. In conclusion, Biden's face-to-face meeting with Xi Jinping generated hopes of warmer ties between the two superpowers and reduced the risk of delisting of Chinese companies from the U.S. The meeting was a constructive and candid dialogue that covered a range of issues from areas of cooperation to sources of friction. The meeting also demonstrated a mutual recognition by both leaders that they need to manage their competition responsibly and avoid conflict. The meeting had a positive impact on the Chinese stock market, which rallied after the news of the meeting as investors welcomed the reduced uncertainty and risk of escalation between the two countries. How China's easing of COVID controls and property crisis boosted the mood of investors and triggered a buying frenzy for Chinese stocks. China's stock market has been on a roller coaster ride in the past year, facing headwinds from the COVID-19 pandemic, regulatory crackdowns, and a looming debt crisis in the property sector. But in recent weeks, the market has shown signs of recovery, as investors bet on China's economic resilience and policy support. What are the factors behind this rebound, and how sustainable is it? One of the main drivers of the market rally is China's easing of some of its COVID restrictions, in a significant step toward reopening its economy and society. China had been pursuing a strict zero-COVID approach for nearly 3 years, imposing harsh lockdowns, mass testing, and mandatory quarantine for anyone who tested positive or came into contact with a confirmed case. This policy had helped China contain the virus and resume economic activity faster than most countries, but it also came at a high cost for people's livelihoods and well-being. In December 2022, China announced sweeping changes to its national pandemic response, loosening some of these restrictions and allowing more flexibility and freedom for people and businesses. For example, people no longer need to show negative virus tests or health codes to travel between different parts of the country, unless they are coming from or going to high-risk areas. People with mild or no symptoms can also isolate at home rather than in state facilities. And most venues no longer require PCR tests for entry, only rapid antigen tests.